welcome to our very first video episode of the Savvy Podcast. Today, Jolie Pullen and I are sharing some quick, practical language learning tips to boost your English and keep you motivated. But let's dive in now, shall we? Welcome back to the Savvy Podcast. And yes, we are on video today.
We are.
Welcome, Jolie. How are you today?
Very well, thanks, Sam. And you? Happy to be here on the first Savvy video podcast.
And you're looking very nice with you've done your hair especially for it, Jolie. Some curls are there, I see.
No, this is an everyday thing. But okay. I knew I was going to be on camera, so you've got to make the extra effort.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You, Sam, your hair looks nice.
I was waiting for that. I set you up for that. Okay, perfect. Well, we have two pieces of news to start off with today. Piece of news number one is, as you can see, we are currently on video, but this is an experiment. It's the first time that we're doing it, and we're not sure if the sound quality will be as good as usual. There may be some mistakes. I'm not used to looking at myself as we're doing the podcast. So please be patient with us, and I hope you still enjoy the podcast and the content will be as good as normal.
I mean, that's the reason why we've decided to test it and to trial the video podcast, because we think that having that visual element, being able to read our lips when we're speaking, our intonation, the way that we express ourselves is also super beneficial. So let us know your feedback.
Yeah, please do. And the second piece of news, maybe more important, is we had our first official complaint about the podcast, and my mum messaged me this week because I gave my dad a shout out in the previous show, and I said that I looked up to my father. Look up to, let's repeat again, Jolie, what is to look up to?
So look up to, is a phrasal verb that we studied last week on the podcast, and it means to admire someone. Yeah, and it's quite literal, because to look up is to look up. And when you look up to someone, you look up to them with admiration. So It's one phrasal verb that has a little bit of logic.
And actually, while we're on the topic, we should also mention the opposite, to look down on someone, which is when you think that you're better than someone. So you look down on them. So you look up to when you admire them. And if you think that you're better than someone, you look down on them.
Exactly.
So I apologise to my mum, and I also, if I physically look down on you, I look up to you in reality. There you are.
Because she's shorter than you.
She's shorter than me, she is indeed.
I get it.
Yeah. Good. Perfect. Now, the topic of today's podcast is language learning tips from our fantastic coach, Jolie. And I might put some input in myself as well.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's something that we both do all day, every day. So I'm sure we can give a lot of value to our listeners today.
Yeah, I hope after 8 years of experience, I have something to give. But before we start, Jolie, I'm going to test your credentials with some questions, as always. Okay. And today we have two questions. Okay. Question number one. How many languages are spoken around the world? Is it A, 700, B, 7,000, or C, 9,000?
Okay. I'm going to go with B, 7,000, just because I feel like I have Googled this question before. And I remember the number 7,000, but I might be wrong. But I'm going to confidently say I think it's 7,000.
No, I like the confidence. But listener, listen until the end to find out the correct answer. Now, question number two. There are a lot of languages spoken in the world, but how many are we losing every year? How many are disappearing? How many are going extinct?
Okay.
Is it A, every year? Is it A, 25, B, 50,
Okay.
Or C, 75?
Oof. This one is not such an educated guess, but I would say probably 75, just because I know that we are rapidly losing languages just because of the way the world is nowadays. And so many, well, there are particular languages, obviously English is one of them, that are dominating. And I don't know if that's one of the main reasons for the disappearance of some of these, but I'm going to go with the highest number, so 75.
75. Okay, perfect. And wait until the end to find out the correct answer. The suspense.
Okay.
Now, let's start. Let's start with something a little light. Okay, when you start a conversation in English or in another language, we often start with small talk. But Jodie, could you explain a little bit what small talk is?
Yeah, small talk. Another synonym that's quite common to use in British English is chit chat. It's like that
nice one.
very small, it's not particularly deep conversation, normally right at the beginning of an interaction. So it's the typical conversations you might have with a taxi driver or in a lift, in an elevator with strangers or colleagues, or for example, at the beginning of a meeting before you start with the agenda, you have normally 5 or 10 minutes to have light conversation.
Yes, this is perfect. Okay, and have you got any tips for our listeners on how to have good small talk?
Well, I think that actually is something that native speakers don't often get right. I think it's a missed opportunity a lot of the time to build a stronger connection with someone right at the beginning of an interaction. So typical small talk questions are always like, how are you? How was your weekend? The weather's nice, isn't it? Or have you been here before? Very like surface level questions that have become so repetitive that we almost answer them automatically without thinking. It's almost become as natural as saying, yeah, I'm fine, thanks.
Yeah.
You don't even think about your answer, you know? So I feel like small talk is a great opportunity to ask someone a question in order to just start to build a connection with them, start to build a rapport with them. So imagine if it's a meeting with your colleagues and you want to create a better feeling amongst your colleagues. Use that moment of small talk to your advantage and start a conversation about something a little bit deeper. So it doesn't mean that we have to talk about our fears and our desires.
Divorce.
But yeah, exactly. No, what I mean, for example, is saying questions like, did anything positive happen to you this weekend? Or did anything make you smile this weekend? Or if you could choose a song to describe your weekend, what would you choose? Things like that maybe initially feel a little bit like, really?
Yeah.
But it opens the door to potentially making a connection with someone, or at least making them smile, or reflecting on a moment that made them smile, and then talking about it. Creating vulnerability and all the kinds of things that we know create human connection. I mean, also another one that I always love to ask in my class that's not deep at all is just asking my student what they had for breakfast, or telling them to ask another student what they had for breakfast, which feels silly and light, but you know, people like to answer that kind of question, and what it does is it gets them talking. They say, really, you have that? Or do you have it every day? Or, oh, I'd never have that. And it just creates an opportunity to build connection. So yeah.
What did you have for breakfast today, Jolie?
I had in Spanish pincho, which is like a piece of Spanish tortilla. It wasn't tortilla de patata, it was tortilla with spinach.
Oh,
and,
lovely.
A coffee with milk, so I'm very Spanish.
Oh, very nice. In the house or on the street?
No, in a coffee shop that's next to the house downstairs.
Oh, beautiful. Very nice.
And you?
There we are, great small talk. Oh, me, actually, I just had in Spanish again, tostada con tomate with ham on top. I just treated myself down there. And a cortado del tiempo. A little bit of ice because the sun is shining, so I wanted my coffee to last a little longer. There we are. Perfect example of small talk. There we are.
Exactly, and it's something so light, but it just encourages people to make a little bit of a connection.
Exactly.
So that would be my advice.
Okay, well, let's get on with it. Okay, now, in your opinion, Jodie, what are some popular ways people try to learn English that actually don't work? So ways of people that don't work, that don't help them learn the language?
Right. Okay. Well, actually, I was thinking about how I wanted to answer this question.
Hmm.
And I was on Instagram last week and I saw another creator who's an English teacher on
Yeah.
Instagram posted a reel where she explained the process of learning a language with an analogy that I have since used maybe 10 times in my classes or with friends to describe the process of learning English. So I want to share
Okay.
it because I think that it's so good. So
Yeah.
she says, or she said, and we'll have to credit her below because this is what she said. But anyway, she said that in the context of learning to drive, so imagine
Hmm.
you're learning how to drive,
Yeah.
and relating it back to English. Grammar is the map, but speaking is the journey.
Oh, wow.
I digress. Let me elaborate. So, what
Yeah.
she means and what she was trying to explain was that you need the grammar to show you the way, to give you the structures. But that is
Hmm.
not the way that you learn a language, nor is it the way that you learn to drive. You learn the language or you learn to drive through the act of doing. So, through
Okay.
the act of driving, or in the case of learning a language, through the act of speaking. So, people become so obsessed with learning the grammar, having a really good foundation of grammar before they speak that they
Yes.
put off is to delay, to procrastinate
Sorry,
the
I missed it. Yeah.
speaking
Yeah.
part. No worries. The speaking part, because they're so obsessed with just having the grammar, the base of the grammar really strong, when actually in reality the way that we learn is through the act of doing, through making mistakes, through someone correcting you in the middle of a conversation or a little awkward moment. That is how we learn. So
Yes.
I thought it was such a good analogy.
It's a very good analogy. Really good. Thank
Yeah.
you. I'm gonna use it in my classes now.
Yeah,
Thanks
do
for
it.
passing it along. Who is she? Who's this
Do
creator
it.
that
I
we need to
actually,
shout
off the
out
top
to?
of my head, I can't remember her name. She is a
From the
fantastic English
top
teacher, but
from the top
go on.
of my head, from the top of my head is when you come up with something in the moment, when you think of something in the moment. So
Yeah,
off
or
the
you
top
know,
of your
you
head, yeah,
literally have it off the top of my
yeah,
head. I can't remember right now in this moment. I don't have it
yeah.
here.
You don't have it right now.
I can't remember, but like I said, we'll have to tag her below when we post this video.
Yeah, hopefully
Um,
she'll chase us down for
no,
for that.
but credit. This is another good expression. Credit where credit's due. We use
Hmm.
the word credit in English. It's not the same in Spanish. To describe recognition, to be recognized for something. So I would say that you deserve the recognition is exactly the same as saying you deserve the credit. So it's quite
Yes,
typical to say credit where credit is due.
yes.
Mm.
Credit where credit is due to her. Now, in our classes, Jodie, well, I'm speaking for myself. I'm sure for you as well.
Okay.
We have learned from this girl's advice, and that we use a lot of speaking in our classes,
Absolutely.
more than the grammar. But
Yeah.
do you think it's enough for the student just to come to the class and speak for an hour to actually learn, or do they need to do more outside the class?
Okay, it's a really good question because sometimes I think that when people attend a class once a week or even twice a week, they feel like, okay, they're making a big effort, which they are, and
Hmm.
that is enough to see a transformation in a short period of time. So I want to
Yes.
use another analogy, which I think is a great way to paint the picture, no? The best way to kind of describe the reality of the situation. And I always like to reference this process back to going to the gym. If you have goals in terms of how you want to change your fitness ability or your body, and let's say you go to the gym once or twice a week, that's great. Those are
Hmm.
really, really great habits. But then imagine you leave the gym and everything else you do does not support the effort that you make for 2 hours a week in the gym. So, for example, your diet is not great.
Yeah.
Or, for example, you have a very sedentary job, you're sat down a lot of the time, so you're not getting your steps in. Basically, your life outside of that classroom doesn't really support the effort that you make in the classroom. You are going
Yes.
to progress, but the progress is going to be much, much slower. Though, like, we can all agree that that is true, right? And with languages, exactly the same, because if you're attending class once or twice a week, that's great. But if you then leave the class and your whole entire world is your native language and not English, and you do nothing else that supports reinforcing the effort you make in those 2 hours, then yes, you are going to progress, but it's going to be really slow.
Yes.
So what can we do? We need to implement things within our day-to-day routine and our real life that support and help reinforce all that effort that we're making in those 2 hours that we're actually in class.
Yes.
So,
And just before we move on, I just want to point out to our Spanish listeners that you said to attend the class, not to assist the class. To attend the class, a very common mistake. Jodie didn't make it. It's to attend the class. Perfect. Good. So that's the end of part 1 of today's first video savvy podcast.
And we'll come
back. We'll come back in a moment after a brief break, and we're going to give some more practical tips for your English learning. So I'll see you on the other side, Jodie. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the break. Just so you know, Jolie and I did actually take a break.
We did.
Yeah,
we went
it's true. It's not. It's not a lie. Okay, but we will continue now. Well, first of all, Jodie, you found the name.
In the break. Exactly. I checked the name of the lovely English teacher who had that wonderful analogy about learning to drive and learning English, and her name is Rodika. Rodika Travel English on Instagram.
Okay, follow her. Shout out to Rodika. Good work. So we were talking before about. We were discussing that learning in the classroom isn't enough. If you really want to progress, you need to do things outside of the classroom as well.
Exactly.
Now, Savvy has actually produced something recently, Jodie, which I know you want to tell our listeners about.
We have.
What has Savvy produced?
Okay, so since the beginning of the year, we've been working really hard on producing extra resources to help our clients and also our community of English students online. And so what we have produced and what I want to talk to you about today is essentially a 12-week guide that students can purchase for a small price. And really, we put a price on it just so you have that element of accountability. Normally, when you pay for something, you are far more likely to see the value in it and to use it. And that's really key. So it's a 12-week guide that takes you through an individual self-study process to first identify what your big goal is with English. And then go a little bit deeper and really be specific about what areas of the language you need to improve because of your reality. So we start with those elements of just clarifying what your objective is. Then it takes you through a 12-week process where you implement small habits and all of the important parts of accountability and reward systems and all of the scientific evidence that goes behind implementing habits and how you can make them stick in your day-to-day routine, but through a really easy to follow 12-week process, which is designed to ultimately transform your habits, because we are such great believers in, yes, it's so important that you're attending English classes, as we have established, but what is so much more important is that you are dedicating time outside of the classroom that complements what you're doing in the classroom. And in order to do that, we need to transform our habits. We need to be implementing things into our day-to-day routine, and that's very hard to do alone. So this guide helps take them through that 12-week process independently. Also within the guide, there is a link to a digital website where they have access to, again, a 12-week program with extra grammar points, pronunciation, audio, links to specific short form videos that reinforce the grammar points that we're explaining in each unit. We also have within them some surveys. They're like questionnaires where you can answer the questions, submit your answers, and see if you're understanding the questions correctly. And finally, and also I know this will probably take us on to another question that you wanted to ask me, within the link to the digital site that's included in this is several prompts that you can copy and paste directly from the site into ChatGPT or whatever other AI platform that you prefer using. in order to start to get familiar with how you can use AI to your advantage to support the process of you reaching fluency in English. So
Yes.
it's an amazing resource. And I think for anyone out there who wants to improve their English independently, or perhaps they're just having one class a week, but they really do know and understand that they need to be implementing habits outside of these classes, but they've tried and failed a million times. We've all been there.
Yeah.
And they really want to follow a strict 12-week process in order to see a transformation and start to implement those habits, then I think, this would be what I would
very useful. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, at the beginning of when you were speaking then, you use something which is to self-study, so to study for yourself. I mean, that's a really good tip. When we're talking about something that you do yourself, we put self at the start. Like very popular books at the moment are self-help books.
Exactly, yeah.
So self-study is to do something
reflexive. Yeah, exactly.
Use self at the start.
To self-motivate, to self-study.
Good one. I was trying to think of one that I couldn't. Yes. Any more?
Yeah. As an adjective, and I find that sometimes I'm this way, although I'm trying very hard to not be self-critical. When you criticize yourself, you are self-critical. It's a word we use a lot to talk about a reflexive action, things that we do to ourselves.
Yes. So you mentioned before a little bit about how somebody can use AI to improve. Have you got any more tips?
Well, exactly. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's something that we've really researched a lot this year in the process of developing these resources to help our community. And so we've learned a lot about all the benefits of AI and how you can start to use it to your advantage. And there are so many things you could do. I mean, I think we probably need another episode just to speak specifically about all the ways.
Always happy to do another episode.
AI, exactly, to improve your English. But for example, just to give you a little example, one thing that you mentioned actually earlier is, let's say you have a doubt about two expressions that are very, very similar. Or two phrasal verbs like the ones we talked about at the beginning, to look up to or to look down on. And you've perhaps listened to an explanation in a short form video online, but you're still not 100% sure how to use it in a context that's relevant to you. Then put that prompt into ChatGPT or another AI platform and ask it specifically, here are two phrasal verbs that I think I understand, but I'd like some further explanation. I want you to give me examples in context, but I want real world examples. I don't want you to pull examples from dictionary sites. I want you to seek examples that come from posts or blogs or people who are using it naturally. Give me some examples and then test me on it with a few different types of activities. And there you have, in literally 2 seconds, a way that you can
class, basically
clarify exactly your understanding with some exercises. So that's one example.
Perfect. Well, Jolie, I'm looking at the time here, and we should bring this to an end, unfortunately.
We should wrap it up, but we have to do another AI episode where we literally just talk about different ways that our students, our listeners, can utilize AI to help them.
Yeah.
Really
don't use an AI host, please.
Or an AI teacher.
An AI teacher, yeah.
Well, it's true that at the moment they're not as good as obviously a real teacher. Who knows where that's going? But you can definitely use AI to support your language learning journey. And if you're not, then you are really missing a trick.
Yes, missing a trick.
Missing an opportunity.
Missing an opportunity. Perfect. And the answers to the questions were... You were correct with number 1. It was 7,000 languages. And in the second question, the correct answer was A, which was 25. Only 25 languages. But still, it's a lot of languages to be losing every year. Yeah. Well, Jolie, it's been a pleasure as always. And listeners, I hope you enjoyed the video. And
yes, please
and also
give us your feedback.
Give us our feedback. And again, sorry to my mum. And see you next week. Bye, Jolie.
Bye. Take care.
And that's a wrap on our first video episode. We hope these tips help you take control of your self-study and keep things fun and focused. Don't miss a trick. Subscribe, like, and check the description for more learning support. See you next time.